Welcome to the students of first PUC. This is session 1 of chapter 5 Laws of Motion. This is the beginning of a new chapter, and before discussing the topics related to this chapter, we will have a view of the syllabus or of the reduced syllabus of this year. Here you have the display of the syllabus of the current academic year prescribed by the Department of Pre-University Education. If you look at there, you see that in the column of the deleted portion, the concept of force, inertia, Newton's first law of motion, momentum, Newton's second law of motion, impulse, and Newton's third law of motion. These topics are being deleted for the current academic year. But without knowing these concepts or these topics, I cannot start the law of conservation of momentum, or it will be difficult for us to understand the remaining retained portions. Therefore, in this session, I will be briefly discussing of all these topics. So, in this session, we will be learning about the concept of force, Newton's first law of motion, momentum, Newton's second law of motion, impulse, and Newton's third law of motion. To understand the basic concepts or the basic concept of force, I will be having a small demonstration. The demonstration here is not an exact phenomenon, but it helps us in understanding the basic concepts of force. Let us begin. I have placed a tennis ball on the table. The ball is in the state of rest. Now, let me make it move. I will try to move it without touching it. Let me try. Tennis ball, please move ahead. Tennis ball, please move to the right. Tennis ball, please move to the left. Tennis ball, go ahead. You observe it. Is it moving? No, it does not move. If I have to move it, then definitely I have to use some other method. So, what am I going to do? So, you observed, if an object at rest has to move, you have to apply an external force. Now, let us try to stop it. Stop. Did it stop? It does not stop. Now, let me make the ball to move again. So, if I have to stop the ball, again I have to apply some force, or I have to object it. Now, the third demonstration. So, in this third demonstration, you saw the direction of the ball changed. In these three demonstrations, in the first case, the ball was at rest. If we had to move it, we had to apply some force. In the second case, the ball was in motion. If you had to stop it, again you have to obstruct it, or you have to apply a force. The third case, the ball was in motion in some direction. If you had to change the direction, again I have to apply the force. From these three demonstrations, you can learn what is force, what is the state of an object, and what do you mean by change in state of an object. Beginning, the force. We can define force as an external agent required to change the state of an object. Now, what do you mean by state of an object? The first demonstration, the state of an object was rest. It was in rest. So, state means it can be rest. In the second and third demonstration, the state of an object there means it was in uniform motion, or motion with a constant speed. By applying force, we changed its state. So, what do you mean by change of state? In the first demonstration, change of state meant changing an object at rest into motion. In the second demonstration, change in state means bringing an object in motion to rest, or increasing or decreasing the speed of an object. In the third demonstration, Change in state meant changing the direction of the object. So, change in state can mean three things: either changing an object in rest into motion, or changing an object in motion into rest, or changing the direction of motion of an object. All these three, or either of these three, mean change in state. So, force changes the state of an object. All these three demonstrations we have already seen in the game of carom or in the game of snooker. There you can see the change of state of rest into motion, or change of state of motion into rest, or change of direction of an object. There you come across these three demonstrations regularly. Finally, I can also state Newton's first law of motion. So, what does it state? Every body continues to be in its state of rest or of uniform motion along a straight line unless compelled by an external force to act otherwise. This is the statement of Newton's first law of motion. Next, we will try to learn what is momentum. Think of the prank that we had played with the children in our home. If at all there was a little child who is cycling in his or her tricycle, we would catch hold of the cycle from behind and the child would be thinking what happened. Consider the same with an adult. If at all we had a friend cycling in the road, can we catch hold of the cycle and stop him? Generally it is not possible. So, what is the difference in these two cases? The difference is momentum. Momentum in physics is defined as the amount of motion or the quantity of motion possessed by an object. Mathematically, momentum is represented by P, small letter p, and it is equal to the product of mass into velocity. Momentum is a vector quantity. In physics, momentum is considered as a vector quantity. So, I represent momentum by the vector p. It is equal to mass into the vector v. Momentum has both magnitude and direction. If you have to consider only the magnitude, then it is simply m into v. How do you measure momentum? In SI unit, momentum is measured in terms of, so SI unit for momentum is, the SI unit for mass is kg, the SI unit for velocity is meter per second. Therefore, momentum in SI units is measured in terms of kg meter per second. We will have a small example to understand the momentum. We will consider a child in our home whose mass is some 10 kgs. The child is cycling, and let us say the velocity or speed of cycling is some 2 meter per second. Cycling fast, covering 2 meters in a second. If you convert this into kilometer per hour, it is very nearly equal to 7.2 kilometer per hour. Now, let us consider an adult. Example, some friend of mine. So, a man whose mass is 50 kg and moving with the same speed, which is 2 meter per second. Then momentum of the child would be, let me take it as P subscript C, mass of the child into the speed of the child. So, I will get this as 10 into 2, 20 kg meter per second. Now, what about the man who is cycling? Momentum of the man. We take P subscript m, it would be mass of the man into the speed of cycling. So 50 into 2 will give us 100. In this way, we can see that how momentum can be defined. For the same speed, the momentum of a child is very much less than the momentum of a man who has been cycling. So, momentum is defined as the amount of motion, and mathematically it is given by mass into speed of motion. If the speed of motion is 0, then momentum is also 0. For a given object which has a mass m, you can also change its momentum by changing its velocity. So generally for a given object, momentum can be changed by changing its velocity. From here, we shall proceed into Newton's second law of motion. So here is your Newton's second law of motion, which tells that the rate of change of momentum of an object is directly proportional to the force applied and is in the direction of the force. So to understand the Newton's second law of motion, if you are considering cycling, if you want to increase the speed of motion, therefore the momentum of an object, then definitely the force applied should also be greater. You can also think of the opposite case, that is, if you want to stop an object in motion, even in that case the force needed to stop the object depends upon the initial speed of the object. If you are braking the same cycle which is travelling at a greater speed, then you will have to apply more greater force in your arms onto the lever, on the brake levers. It does not stop all that easily. So both these examples tells us that the rate of change of momentum is directly proportional to force applied. What do you mean by rate of change of momentum? Which is change in momentum with respect to time. So mathematics. We first see what is change in momentum. Mathematically, a change in momentum, if P represents momentum, then change in momentum I represent by the symbol delta P. This is the symbol delta. What about rate of change of momentum? This is change in momentum divided by the time taken to change its momentum. So delta P by delta T. I can read it as delta P by delta T. This expression represents rate of change of momentum. What does Newton's second law of motion tell? Rate of change of momentum is directly proportional to the force applied. So proportionality, this symbol represents directly proportional or is directly dependent on the force applied. Greater the force, faster is the change of momentum. Lesser the force, slower is the change of momentum. By telling rate of change of momentum, how fast can the momentum be changed? It is not just that how great the change in momentum is, it is how fast or how slow the momentum is changed. That is what you mean by rate of change of momentum. The rate of change of momentum is directly proportional to the force applied. Further, take out the proportionality, we will get an equal symbol, and what we get is a constant of proportionality. This constant K is found to be equal to 1. Therefore, finally I can write the force applied is going to be equal to rate of change of momentum. By telling change in momentum, which means generally the mass of an object is a constant, what can be changed is its velocity. Further, mass is a constant, so rate of change of velocity is acceleration. We have learnt this in chapter 3, motion in a straight line. So force is mathematically measured in terms of mass into acceleration. Whenever you apply force on an object, which means its velocity changes. If its velocity is changing with time, which means it is being accelerated, therefore force is equal to mass into acceleration. Force leads to acceleration of an object. Generally, we use the term acceleration, which means increasing the speed of motion. Force does not mean just increasing the speed, it can also mean decreasing the speed. In that case, we may use the term retardation or negative acceleration. So, force leads to either acceleration or retardation. In other words, either an increase of speed or decrease of speed. Force can also lead to change in direction without increasing or decreasing the speed of motion. Force does not mean just increase or decrease in speed of motion, force can also mean change in direction. Force is a vector quantity. So, instead of representing in just in terms of magnitude, I can also represent third law of motion or force as force is a vector. Therefore, I can write force is directly proportional to rate of change of momentum. Momentum is also a vector, and finally force gives me rate of change of momentum. By doing mathematics, what I have is force is equal to mass into acceleration. Acceleration is a vector, therefore force is also a vector. And while measuring in SI units, how do I measure? So, SI unit of force. So, what is the SI unit? If you remember, force is mass into acceleration or mass into velocity by time. Acceleration is rate of change of velocity. I can take it simply as velocity by time. So, unit of F is going to be, unit for mass is kg, unit for velocity meter per second, unit for time is second, second into the numerator. So, this becomes second to power minus 2. So, in SI unit, force is measured in terms of kg meter per second square, and this unit is given a name, and the name of this unit is Newton. Force is measured in terms of Newton. Newton represented by capital N. Many a times a question arises to define 1 Newton. What is 1 Newton? How do you define 1 Newton? The force is said to be 1 Newton if a mass of 1 kg is accelerated by 1 meter per second square. Therefore, make an acceleration of 1 meter per second square in an object of mass 1 kg, then the force applied is going to be equal to 1 Newton. This is the definition for 1 Newton or SI unit of force. We will now learn what is an impulse. Where do we see impulse? We will first think of some examples for impulse. In the game of cricket, when a ball is being hit by a bat, the amount of time of contact between the bat and the ball is very small, or it is a very short interval of time. Similarly, when you are considering the game of snooker, the amount of time for which one ball is in contact with the other ball is very small, or when you throw a ball towards a wall, the amount of time of contact between the ball and the wall is very small. but still there is considerable force exerted on the other object. For example, in the game of cricket, though the time of contact between the ball and the bat is very small, the force applied on the ball is greater and the ball travels in the opposite direction or in whichever direction we hit. So, impulse is defined as large amount of force acting for a short interval of time, resulting in a definite change in momentum of an object. Mathematically, impulse is given by force into time, and you know that force is rate of change of momentum, time or time interval, I can again write it as delta t, so cancel it. So, what it gives is change in momentum. So, impulse can also be defined as change in momentum. Impulse on an object can be measured by measuring the change in its momentum. We have an example in your NCERT. By looking into this example, we can understand what is impulse. Here is a numerical given in your NCERT textbook. A batsman hits back a ball straight in the direction of the bowler without changing its initial speed of 12 meter per second. If the mass of the ball is 0.15 kg, determine the impulse imparted to the ball. Assume linear motion of the ball. So, let us note down the data given in this numerical. What is being given is mass of the ball, which is 0.15 kg. It is initially travelling with a speed. So, I will note down as initial velocity as V naught, which is 12 meter per second. It has been mentioned that the ball is hit back towards the bowler. Therefore, final velocity, I can take it as V, is going to be equal to minus 12 meter per second. Initially, the ball was going towards the batsman. As he hits, it goes towards the bowler. So, the direction of the ball after hitting is opposite to the initial direction. Now, impulse is equal to change in momentum. So, mass of the ball into final velocity minus mass of the ball into initial velocity. The other way of writing this is the final momentum minus the initial momentum. So, m into the final velocity minus m into the initial velocity. Further, so what is the mass? 0.15 kg into minus 12 meter per second minus 0.15 kg into 12 meter per second. So, this gives minus of 1.8 minus 1.8 minus and minus, you will have to add it. So, I will get this as, finally the impulse is adding this to minus 3.6 and the SI unit is kg meter per second. So, this gives me the impulse imparted on the ball or the change in momentum of the ball. The sign minus specifies that the direction is now opposite to the initial direction. This example helps us to understand impulse or the method of calculating impulse on an object. Now, we shall learn Newton's third law of motion. Everyone is familiar with the statement of Newton's third law of motion. Even a common man uses this statement in many a case. But the understanding of a common man is not as what it is. Now let us look into the statement. What does the statement tell? So here is the statement. It tells us that for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. We will try to understand this. Here is a diagram to understand Newton's third law of motion and to also eliminate some of the misconceptions about Newton's third law of motion. I will consider two spheres, both are moving in the same direction. One of the sphere is moving with a greater velocity v1 than the other sphere moving with a smaller velocity v2. So therefore, what happens after some time, the mass m1 is going to collide with the mass m2. So this is what it represents. When there is collision, so when there is collision between these two objects, in this case we see Newton's third law of motion. For every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. When the mass m1 collides with mass m2, so this is applying a force F21, force on object 2 because of object 1. At the same time, the mass m2 also applies an equal and opposite force on mass m1. So it is represented by F12, force on mass 1 due to mass 2. As a result of this, the velocity of both the object may change because of force applied on mass 2. So its velocity may increase than the earlier case, while an equal and opposite force is applied by 2 on 1. Therefore, the greater velocity now has decreased. Here in the second diagram, we consider two things. What are those two things? Action and reaction always occur in pairs, and the second thing is they occur at the same time. Many of them may have a misconception that reaction takes place after some time of action, or reaction is the effect and action is the cause. No, there is no thing as cause and effect. Whenever you say that there is force applied on one object, which means the other object is equally applying an opposite force. Here F12 is equal and opposite to F21, that is force on object 1 due to the second object is equal and opposite to force on the second object due to the first object. This is the last topic of discussion in today's session. We will recall once again all the topics discussed in this session. In today's session, we have learned what is force, what do you mean by the state of an object, and what do you mean by change of state. We have learned Newton's first law of motion. We have learned what do you mean by momentum, the SI unit for momentum, or how do you measure momentum. Newton's second law of motion. From Newton's second law of motion, we learned the mathematics of force. Force is measured in terms of mass into acceleration. And then we have learned what do you mean by impulse. And finally, Newton's third law of motion. We also discarded the misconceptions about the Newton's third law of motion. Based on the topics of discussion in this session, we will continue the topics of discussion in the next session, or we will begin the actual syllabus for this academic year.